obligation. So I want to share a little story that happened just yesterday with you that I think illustrates what eating out of obligation is. So I had a late breakfast and I was invited to a lunch meeting. And so by the time I got there, I wasn't hungry at all. There was all types of food laid out for me. Well, not just for me, but for everybody there. And I just wasn't hungry for it. And so I'm happy to report I didn't eat it. However, it was interesting because in a way, I felt obligated to eat. There was plenty of food there. It was a lunch meeting after all. So that feeling where you feel like you should be eating or it would be appropriate to eat, but you're not hungry, that's what I call eating out of obligation. So eating out of obligation could happen to anybody. It's quite normal and it's quite natural, really. So what I want to talk about today is what about it makes it so challenging? Like, why is it so hard to navigate eating out of obligation? This is a conversation I've had over the past few months with several clients and friends who struggle with that feeling that they should be eating even though they're not hungry. So to start off, I want to talk a little bit about why it could be so complicated, to honor yourself in those situations. Partly, this is because as humans, we're social, tribal, or communal creatures, whatever you want to call it. We like being part of a tribe or a family or a friendship or a unit, whatever you want to call it. And saying no to food seems to threaten that connection. And for a very primitive part of our brains, that could feel scary. So in those situations where you're not hungry and somebody offers you food, or you're not craving that specific thing and somebody offers you food, it's hard to say no because it seems to threaten that sense of community. And so oftentimes we might override our no. We might go ahead and eat that food. But unfortunately, when we do that, we may feel uncomfortable, we may feel bloated and regretful. On the other hand, if we are to honor ourselves, if we are to say, no, I'm not feeling it, I'm not that hungry for it, it could bring up a lot of new feelings. It could bring up feelings like we're being unloyal to the tribe, like we might get kicked out of the tribe. It could be really scary. But on the other hand, it could feel really good because we are staying present to our bodies, we're honoring our bodies. So that's why the choice could feel so complicated, because we're really choosing between these two feelings. Feeling like we're safe, we're within the tribe, but neglecting our bodies or overriding our body signals and maybe feeling resentful. And the other feeling is honoring ourselves, feeling comfortable in our body, but maybe like we're being disloyal to our tribe or to our community. So sometimes that's what it boils down to. Again, that's why it could be so challenging. So what I want to talk about now are ways to navigate this situation so you could do so with more ease and freedom and peace. So guideline number 1 is, if you notice that you're eating out of obligation, is acknowledge yourself. Let me put it this way. Most people who eat out of obligation don't even realize that they're doing it. So if you catch yourself eating out of obligation, eating because you feel like you should, even though you really don't want it, that's definitely a step in the right direction. So you definitely want to high five yourself or acknowledge yourself for realizing that this pattern is taking place. Guideline number 2, if you're in that situation where you feel like you have to eat out of obligation, a nice step you could take if you're not really ready to say no is maybe eat less. So some creative ways that you could do that is share the food with somebody else, or maybe just cut the food in half and just take a small piece of it, or take a few bites, are some creative ways to, if you're not quite ready to say no and set that boundary, still have the food, but maybe have less of it. Again, if you want the food, go ahead, eat the food by all means, enjoy it. If you're hungry, enjoy, or if you feel like it, please. But these are those situations when you just really don't feel like the food, but you feel pressured to eat. The third guideline that you could use, and you probably had a feeling that this one was coming, was actually lovingly and kindly assert that boundary by saying something like, that does look really good. Thank you so much for sharing it with me, but right now I'm not hungry and I'm learning to tune into my body, and that just wouldn't feel good to make myself eat that now. Or you could do what I did, when I came into that meeting, I wasn't hungry, and I just put myself a plate, and later on towards the end of the meeting when I did get hungry, I had that food available for me. Another guideline is you could take that food and pack it up and take it to go, or you could just, without any kind of excuse, you could just say, no thank you, I'm not hungry, but that looks great. For me, obviously, it's hard for me to set this boundary, so I sometimes explain why. I'm just attuning to my body, and my body's not hungry right now. But you don't have to do that. I just do that because I feel more comfortable with that. And guideline number 4 is to feel the new feelings that may come up when you do something new. After all, it's been hard to set this boundary. It's been hard to, tell somebody no thank you, because of what's on the other side of saying that. And what's on the other side of saying that are new feelings that you haven't experienced before. So sometimes those feelings could be so unexpected that it could cause somebody to go back and do that undesired behavior again, because it could feel so confronting. So step number 4 is anticipating and recognizing that there might be new feelings that may come up. The feelings won't kill you, but they might be there, and to just lovingly be with yourself during those feelings. So some things I like to do is, maybe put my hands on my heart and take a few deep breaths. Or, you could text a friend, or if you're working with a coach, or if you're working with me, you could email me your win. I'd love to know. Another great tool I like to do, especially when setting the boundary is hard, and again, this tool is great for things even beyond food, is when I do something different, is the way I like to remind myself that I could live through it is this technique I learned. And what I want you to do right now while you're watching this is to interlace your fingers just like this. Do it a few times, and squeeze really hard every time you do it. And as you're doing this, notice that the same top thumb keeps on coming up on top again and again. This is basically you doing something out of habit, is that same thumb coming up on top again and again. So what I want you to do right now is to take the opposite thumb and put it on top, and then interlace your fingers again, so it's in the opposite direction. And I like to do this because it reminds me about change. It feels weird, it maybe even feels uncomfortable, and I want to go back to the way it was, but I'll live. I can make it through it. This is not going to kill me. So I hope you found this video helpful. So to recap, what we're talking about is eating out of obligation. Eating when you don't want the food just because you feel like you should. We talked about why that could be so challenging. It could be so hard because ultimately humans are communal or tribal creatures. We like to be a part of a group, and saying no to food could feel like it threatens that on some level. So saying no could be really hard for a lot of us. So the tools that we talked about is the first tool, especially if you're more new to this, is recognize that it's happening. Even if you go ahead to eat that food, but you realize it's happening out of obligation, acknowledge yourself that, oh, here it is, I'm doing it. Guideline number 2 is if somebody's offering you food and you don't want it, you're not quite ready to say no all the way, is have less of the food. Maybe share it with somebody, or cut it in half and take a few bites, or some creative ways to have less of the food. The third tool is to go ahead and say that boundary by saying something like no thank you, or I'm not hungry right now, but that looks great, thank you for offering it to me, in a loving way, of course. And guideline number 4 is expect there to be new feelings to come up, and as you feel those feelings, to be loving with yourself and kind. So I hope you found this video helpful. It's been a great pleasure sharing this information with you. If you would like to receive these videos and never miss a video again, please, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you could go to my website and you could download my free ebook, Stop Overeating Now, and you'll get my weekly, bi-weekly videos that I send out. And for those of you who want more, for those of you who really resonated with this video, I want to offer you a complimentary food freedom coaching session with me. It's private, it's on the phone, it's totally complimentary as my gift to you. If you haven't had one in the past year, I invite you to take me up on that. And during that call, I'll help you get clear on what's going on and to know the very next step to take. So all the links are going to be in the description below, so feel free to navigate that. And thank you so much for watching. My name is Eve Lahijani, and I love helping people cultivate peace with food in any situation, no matter what is happening in their lives. Thank you so much for watching.